Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here, and here it is, my much requested and long awaited Annihilation Marauder guide. If you have been following my channel for a while, you will know that I don't rate this spec very highly for PvP, so I haven't really played it in over a year, but you asked for a guide and I deliver. So I spent some time relearning it over the last couple of days, got some decent results with it, with the build I'm going to show you today. And while I'm in no way saying that I'm the best Annihilation Marauder in the world, I am sure that both beginner and experienced Marauder players can learn something from it. Similar to my concealment guide, I will not only focus on PvP, but try to explain how the class works in general and how you can play it in PvE as well. As always, when I release a guide, there will be some Annihilation gameplay coming out over the next days on my channel, so stay tuned for that. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And of course, there's also a written version of this guide, so if you prefer to read, jump over to my Substack and check it out there. Link to that is of course in the description below. But without further ado, let's talk about Annihilation, which is a melee damage over time DPS class that has something unique in that it can heal the whole group while doing damage with its dots. And being a Marauder Combat Style, Annihilation has access to some of the most powerful defensives in the game, in addition to having very good sustained DPS. Talking about the last balance changes and the place of Annihilation in the meta, Marauder was one of the classes that has been hit the hardest by the great ability pruning in Legacy of the Sith. It lost most of its utility, such as Obfuscate and Intimidating Roar, and now needs to choose between Mad Dash, Force Choke and Undying Rage in the combat style tree, whereas previously it had access to all of these abilities. The last time it got real balance changes was in patch 7.2, where BioWare made rage management a little bit easier and buffed the damage of many abilities in compensation for nerfing the Draining Center mod. Being a true melee class, Annihilation needs to be in 4 meter range to do any meaningful damage, and this is the first reason why I rate it below the other two Marauder specs for PvP. To make matters worse, it neither has the extra movement speed of Carnage nor the secondary leap of Fury, so it can get kited in PvP. Annie also doesn't have any meaningful burst, and no 30k rend hits do not count as burst. And as opposed to Fury or Carnage, it also does not have any rotational crowd control immunity. In PvE, however, Annihilation is an absolute powerhouse because there is less movement needed, bosses will not cleanse your dots as often as players, and the passive group healing and strong raid buffs it provides means that any operations group typically wants to bring at least one Annihilation Marauder. Okay, so Annihilation has 6 key abilities that you need to understand as a beginner. The first 3 are your dot abilities, with Rupture being the first. So Rupture does some initial white damage and then a 9-second internal bleed. Like most of your abilities, you need to be within 4 meter range to use this ability, and it costs 2 rage, which is of course your primary resource. And if you do have the rage, it doesn't have a cooldown, so you can spam it. And also spread it to other targets using Smash via the Hemorrhaging Smash level 23 talent. Your second dot ability is called Force Rend. This one builds 4 rage and has a 10 meter range, which makes it quite useful. And with the gear that we are going to talk about in a second, has a cooldown of a little bit more than 11 seconds. Similar to Rupture, the dot from it lasts for 9 seconds. But it does exclusively yellow internal damage, which means that you will rarely ever miss it, and it will do more damage to tanks and other high armor targets. Same as Rupture, it can also be spread via Smash. Your third dot ability is called Deadly Saber, and works a bit differently compared to the other two, in the way that it doesn't do any direct damage, but it buffs your next 3 melee attacks to apply a stacking bleed effect on your target. And this one does a lot of damage, but it is unique, meaning you can only apply it to one target. It costs 3 rage to activate. So you see 1 stack, 2 stacks and 3 stacks, but you can only stack it on a melee attack. And once you have 3 stacks, it will tick down and then expire until the cooldown comes up again. Next we have Fury, which is also your secondary resource. You can build it before entering combat by using your regeneration ability, looks like this, or by activating Frenzy. In combat you will constantly build Fury stacks as long as you use abilities that cost Rage, up to a maximum of 30 stacks, at which point you can use those stacks to activate either Berserk or your raid buff Bloodthirst. Berserk is the next key ability. It will make your next 6 dots auto-crit and heal your group for 1% of their maximum health. And while that might not seem like much, it can make the difference between surviving and wiping in longer fights. And the final key ability is Annihilate, which is a 4 meter range melee attack that costs you 4 rage to use and also does decent damage. But the special thing about it is that its cooldown will become shorter as you use it more often, which gives Annihilation that ramping up sustained damage feeling, meaning your DPS will go up the longer you manage to stay in combat without interruption. For your tactical, whether you play PvP or PvE, the best one is Spiteful Saber. Because not only does it buff Rupture's damage, it also makes it so you will only need to use it once, as long as you stay on the same target, because Vicious Lash, Vicious Throw, and Dual Saber Throw will refresh its duration and take the damage. For science, I have also tried out Malmural Mask, which turns Annihilate into an AoE, but I wasn't too impressed with that one since Annihilate's cooldown is still quite long and it's also wide damage, so you will miss it quite often. There are better ways of doing AoE damage, which we will talk about later. The best legendary implant is Dispatcher. It will make any crit with a weapon attack generate 1 rage, and that means you hardly ever run out, which makes the spec just that much easier to play. So you can see here, if I run my rotation, let's say I leap in, put Rupture on the target, build some rage, and now I just spam Vicious Slash. As long as I crit, my rage will almost not go down. And I can almost keep spending this indefinitely. So this is the main reason you want to use Dispatcher. Additionally, it will give you an auto crit on your Execute, Vicious Throw, or on Vicious Slash after you activate Dual Saber Throw. So that's a boost to your DPS. But the main reason, as I said, is you want to use this for the extra rage, which makes it so you can spam your abilities that much more than you could otherwise. The second best implant that you should use for either PvP or PvE is Berserker's Call. Not to be confused with Berserker's Package. This one reduces the cooldown of Frenzy and also buffs all your damage by 5% for 10 seconds after activating Berserk. And yes, I've tried Fearless Victor. While the damage difference isn't big, especially in an AoE fight where you can spread your dots, Berserker's Call will be more useful. For your gear, in PvP, you can either use the Thursian PvP gear, which goes up to item level 336, or any higher item level PvE gear, such as the modded 336 to 340 item level gear from Hide and Seek, or even the Rakata 344 gear. They will all give you almost the same stats as soon as you enter a warzone or arena. On this character, I'm using a mix of the Thursian earpiece and relics, haven't even fully upgraded them, and then I'm using modded 336 gear with the Hide and Seek mods. For your stats in PvP, you want to first focus on getting your Alacrity rating up to around 2150. That's the ideal case. And that will allow you to get your global cooldown to 1.4 seconds, meaning that every time you use an ability that is on the global cooldown, be it Rend, Battering Assault, basically everything that's not a kind of a cooldown such as Cloak of Pain or Deadly Saber, means that between every ability, Vicious Slash for example, there will be 1.4 seconds. Whereas normally if you use less Alacrity, you would have 1.5 seconds. So this can be quite a big buff to your overall DPS in a longer fight. And to get to that rating, you can use 2 Alacrity pieces and 3 superior or golden Alacrity augments on top of your legendary implant. And if you don't have the gold augments, you can also do what I did here and use 3 Alacrity pieces with Alacrity on the enhancement, and then use the implant of course, which gets you to around 2300 Alacrity It's a bit more than you needed, but honestly, it will not change your DPS all that much. Since about 50% of your damage comes from white hits and can miss in PvP, you need 5% accuracy. And to get to that 5%, you need about 1100 accuracy rating, which you can get from running one piece with an accuracy enhancement, the advanced Curprax Proficient Stim, and 2 golden accuracy augments. And if you cannot or don't want to afford the golden augments, you can also run 3 purple ones. The best relics for PvP are the Thursian Relic of Serendipitous Assault and Focused Retribution, so those you will get from the PvP vendor. But if you're still gearing like me on this new character and first you drop the Crit Proc Relic, aka Devastating Vengeance, you can use that one as well. The main difference when gearing for PvE is that you need 10% accuracy because operation bosses in hard modes and above will have 10% defense chance and can avoid both your white and yellow damage. So the number one priority is to reach more than 2694 accuracy rating. However, you want to stay as close as possible to this number and don't go much above it, as that would be a waste of stats, which you could otherwise put into crit. With the best available gear currently in the game, the Rakata 344 gear, you need 3 armor pieces with accuracy, the advanced Curprax Proficient Stim, and 4 gold accuracy augments. For alacrity, your goal will be the same, around 2150 will be just fine. With the Rakata gear, that means you need 2 pieces with alacrity, your 2 fully upgraded legendary implants, and 2 gold alacrity augments. And the rest of your stats should go into crit. For PvE relics, you want to run the Rakata 344 relic of Focused Retribution and Serendipitous Assault. But if you drop it first, you can also use the Rakata relic of Devastating Vengeance. The DPS difference is very small. For your build, at level 23, I run Yo-Yo Rend. The 10 Fury on using Force Rend makes it so you have Berserk up much faster, which means more crits, more heals, more rage generated, and a higher uptime on the buff from your Berserker's Call package. The other option, Draining Center, got nerfed recently, but still does a little bit more DPS in a perfect world. But then again, PvP is rarely a perfect world, and often you would need to delay your Force Rend until you have Berserk stacks ready, which makes the extra damage you get from draining less attractive. So for PvP, I just think Yo-Yo Rend plays much nicer. Level 27, Predation is one of the best abilities in the game. It breaks roots and buffs your whole group with 80% movement speed and 10% melee range defense chance. So if you're not running this, then you are absolutely trolling. At level 39, I recommend running Rupturing Rage because the 20% trauma healing debuff can go a long way in finishing off a low HP target or pressuring healers. At 43, Bleeding Center makes Berserk generate 4 Rage, which is a great synergy with your Yo-Yo Rend. And it also makes your Bleed crits generate Fury, which means even more Berserk. Level 51, Interloper is required, as otherwise anyone you leap to can just force speed away. And next to Predation, this is your best way to catch up to ranged players, of which there are plenty in the Warzones today, so I recommend that you always take this. Level 64, Blood Ward gives you crowd control immunity, in this case 6 seconds of immunity to stuns, sleeps, lifts and incapacitating effects. Real must-have for PvP. Level 68, I like Mad Dash for PvP because it can be used both offensively, for chasing after ranged players for example, or defensively, for example running away or avoiding incoming damage during the dash. Undying Rage is powerful too, but it's only a defensive tool, and since Annihilation can get kited quite easily, I prefer to run Mad Dash. At level 73, I tried all 3 options, but to be honest, none of them are that great. Thirst for Rage gives you some extra rage once every 5 minutes, which you don't really need. The heal sounds good on paper, but in PvP you will receive less incoming healing anyway because of the trauma debuff. Interceptor gives you a 50% slow on Force Charge and Rend, which can be nice, but most classes that you want to slow have an immunity or slow breaker anyway, and the slow only lasts for 6 seconds, so it's kind of meh. And I finally ended up running Brazen, because 2% damage reduction is better than nothing, and the added Fury when attacked means you have more Berserk, more damage, and more heals overall. Now this class sucks ass at Arena, but if you absolutely must play it, then I would recommend running Undying Rage instead of Mad Dash, because dying in Arena sucks a lot more than in war zones. For PvE, you will have better uptime compared to PvP, so you can run Draining Center at level 23. However, Rend is still easier to use and will do more than enough DPS. Or maybe even more if you are new to the game, because it makes resource management that much easier. Other than that, I would recommend picking up Bloodwave at level 39. The other two options are really useless in PvE, and Bloodwave lets you do some nice AoE damage to ads in operations or otherwise. At level 51, you don't need the second leap in PvE typically, so the free AoE damage reduction you get from Steel Self is quite nice, since a lot of the damage you will take in PvE will be coded as AoE, even if maybe it doesn't seem that way. And finally, at level 73, run Thirst for Rage for even more self-healing. It's a bit better in PvE than it is in PvP. Okay, let's talk about how to do damage. So, before you start the fight, make sure to use your regeneration ability to build your 30 stacks of Fury. Then you force charge in, that builds some rage. Next you pop Deadly Saber, use Battering Assault to build some more range, put your Rupture on the target, pop Berserk, Force Rend, and Annihilate. And after this you need to decide whether the target maybe uses the defensive or starts to kite. If you want to stay on the same target, use Dual Saber Throw, and then simply spam Vicious Slash until Deadly Saber comes off cooldown, and then you go again, Deadly Saber, Berserk, Force Rend. And if you do this without interruption, you should never need to use Rupture again, because as long as you spam Vicious Slash or Dual Saber Throw, Rupture will always get renewed. Of course, if there are multiple targets and you have applied your dots, you can spread them with Smash. For PvE, again, we are running Draining Center, and the rest we can now leave like this. The PvE rotation is also not that complicated. You kind of want to follow the same guidelines as for the PvP combo. So make sure you use your Deadly Saber on cooldown, and then always combine Berserk and Force Rend. It's very important to make the most use of Draining Center. And if you have perfect uptime on the target, then Berserk should be always available shortly after Force Rend comes off cooldown anyway. The next thing, of course, is using Annihilate as often as possible to make use of the stacking ramping effect. Dual Saber Throw, use it only if you have the Pulverize proc, so if it lights up basically. And then if you ever get unlucky with crits and threaten to run out of rage, simply use Battering Assault or Ravage. And I guess the final tip would be, if your target is below 30%, you should replace the first Vicious Slash after Dual Saber Throw with a Vicious Throw. And that is because using Dual Saber Throw with a Dispatcher implant gives you an auto crit on Vicious Throw or Vicious Slash, and obviously Vicious Throw does more damage. So here on the left you will see how the first two blocks of this rotation look. So again, you build your 30 stacks, you jump in, pop Deadly Saber, Battering Assault, Rupture, and then Berserk and Rend, Annihilate, Dual Saber Throw is procced, and then just Vicious Slash, Vicious Slash, Vicious Slash, Deadly Saber, Vicious Slash, Vicious Slash, and Berserk and Force Rend is available again. And you can keep this going almost indefinitely. Annihilate, Dual Saber Throw, Vicious Slash, Deadly Saber, Vicious Slash, Berserk, and Force Rend. It's really not that complicated. Next, let's look at the defensive cooldowns. The first one being Predation. Looks really cool and gives you and your whole group movement speed and also defense chance for 10 seconds. And it only has a 30-second cooldown, so you can use it quite liberally. The only reason I would not use this to start a fight is because I anticipate that I'm going to need it to break a root soon. For example, when I'm fighting a sorcerer or a sniper in PvP. Second, Cloak of Pain reduces all your damage taken by 20%, reflects some of it back at your attacker, and also refreshes its duration to a maximum of 30 seconds when you get attacked. If you took Steel Self for PvE, this will also give you a 30% AoE damage reduction. I guess the same is true for Predation, forgot to mention that. And since Cloak of Pain has a really short cooldown of only 1 minute, I typically use this second. Next, if you took Undying Rage, I would typically use this one third. Now it only lasts for 6 seconds, but reduces incoming damage by 99%. So dying through this is a special achievement, and if you manage to do it, please do send me a video. Saber Ward buffs your defense chance, yellow damage reduction, and makes you immune to crowd control because we took Blood Ward. Unfortunately, it has a very long cooldown of 3 minutes, so make sure you use it wisely and don't waste it. Force Camouflage is like all your other cooldowns combined. It buffs movement speed, removes all cleansable effects, grants you CC immunity, reduces damage taken by 50%. The only thing it does not do is increase your defense chance, and that's only because it turns you invisible, which would make defense chance quite useless. Camouflage is one of the best defensives in the game, and it only has a 45-second cooldown. But still, don't be a noob and use it as soon as something hits you. Instead, use it strategically to avoid a PowerTech or Engineering Sniper bursting you, or on a boss in PvE casting a big raid-wide hit. In PvP, I usually use this last as my HP is running low, run away from the fight and regenerate or let the healers do their job. Finally, some gameplay tips. You can use Smash or Sweeping Slash when you have downtime between the fight to stack up your Fury. And now we have Berserk ready for the next fight, and we can do this while we move. And the final thing that you should know is how Blood Wave actually works. So when you use Rupture, it will send out a wave around your primary target. And if those secondary targets, again, around the primary target, also have dots on them, it will trigger additional damage for each dot they have. Some people assume that it will tick the dots, but it does not. It simply does extra damage that will show up as Rupture in the combat log. So to maximize this, simply apply your dots to the primary target, spread them via Smash to the additional targets, and then spam Rupture on the target in the center. In PvP, this can be hard to use since people usually don't just stand still. So in my opinion, you are better off to just use your single target rotation and then add in Smash to spread your dots. But in PvE, this can do around 40 to 50k DPS, which is not enough to compete with the top dogs for AoE damage, but if you need to clear some adds, it can be good to know. You will also see the animation, so let's say I have some dots on these guys here, and I will spread them. Then you will see this little circle. That is the animation for Blood Wave. Finally, about the matchups for PvP, easy classes to face can be all of the mercenaries, because as long as you save your CC breaker for Electronet, mercenaries cannot really kite you that easily. And while you don't have the damage to kill them fast, neither do they. So this will be a longer, sustained fight, which is exactly what Annihilation wants, of course. Vengeance Juggernauts can obliterate your whole team if you're not careful, but they are great targets to spread your dots off, since they like to be in the middle of the fight. And then also your group healing from Berserk can help healers keep up with Vengeance insane AoE DPS. Classes that you don't really want to face as Annihilation Marauder include Advanced Prototype PowerTechs. They are a bad matchup in PvP because they simply outrange you and can also one-shot you before you even have fully stacked your Deadly Saber. The same goes for Engineering Snipers. They will one-shot you from 50% HP, and if you ever get close to them through Plasma Probe, Knockback Root and their 3 rolls, they still have Hololocate and a passive that heals them for 6k HPS, probably as much as you do, simply for being in cover. When it comes to synergies, Annihilation goes well with other Marauders, because being able to chain together multiple predations means that you are way harder to kite or to chase down. It also goes well with any of the tanks, who can turn the game into an AoE sustained battle, and also the guard keeps you from getting one shot, of course. that's all for this guide. If you have a question, let me know in the comments below. And of course, guys, if you enjoyed this one, please don't forget to leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.